Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Moneeka Sawyer.
Hi there, ladies. I was recently on a summit for conscious leadership, and the title of my talk was Tantra for Leadership. And it was such a fun opportunity to share about the different styles of leadership. It seems like most of us here think of leadership as a very masculine style, right? That's what we see. That's what we think we need to be. But it turns out that there are many different kinds of leadership, and many of them are very feminine. And they're types of leadership that we are very good at as women, and they help us to stand in our power and be more powerful in everything that we do. So a lot of people think that they're not leaders, right? I'm not the kind of person that stands up and leads people or whatever, but that's not really what leadership is all about, right? We're leaders for our children. We're leaders for our family. We're leaders when we are trying to get something done, maybe in a PTA or in a club or at work, right? We play leadership roles in a lot of different areas of our life. And understanding that you are a leader and what kind of leader you are helps you to stand in the power and amplify all of those really great assets that that kind of leadership style has. Right? And then you discover like that kind of leadership is great. There's all these things that are really amazing about it. And so you feel good. For me, it's a really big part of my bliss to really understand what kind of leader I am, what turns me on, what excites me, what my style is, so that I'm not trying to be something other than what I naturally am, but I can still be a leader. So for me, it's been really, really a part of my bliss in my life, but also it's helped to make me very powerful in my business. It's helped me to be more decisive, more powerful, to negotiate more strongly, right? To just understand myself. So I think that this conversation is really relevant because it is going to show up in your real estate world. And so I just wanted to share it with you. So enjoy this talk, and I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear, if you want to email me and let me know what you thought of it. That would be really, really awesome. Okay, enjoy the talk.
Hello, and welcome to Energy Secrets for Conscious Leaders. Today, my guest is Moneeka Sawyer. Moneeka is a personal success coach and Tantra energy expert who has been coaching executives in the Silicon Valley for over 10 years. Her unique approach to leadership has helped clients from artists and solopreneurs to high-tech CEOs discover their own personal leadership style and create a whole new sense of power, energy, and excitement about their businesses and their lives. She loves the power, playfulness, and daring of using Tantra to make us our very best selves. Moneeka teaches how to understand your own innate energetic makeup for improving communications, creating more fulfilling relationships, and being a more effective leader in all areas of life. Welcome, Moneeka.
Hello there, Catherine. So nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you. I love, the way you describe your work in your bio, and that you are actually even talking about Tantra and leadership and connection. So maybe we could start to define for the audience what Tantra is. So let's hear what it is to you, Moneeka.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. Yeah, when people hear that word, especially here in the Western world, they have all these weird ideas about, well, not weird, but just what we've been taught, right? We think it's all sexy or it's kinky or whatever it is. So let me clear up traditionally what Tantra is and what we're talking about. So Tantra is the yoga of living. So it was created about 5,000 years ago, maybe even longer, but that's when it was first documented in India, so that people in the Indian caste system who were not considered yogis or Brahmins, which is the highest caste, then those caste members had the inherent God-given right, according to the culture, to pursue enlightenment and spirituality. But that wasn't something that the rest of us had access to, the normal person. And so Tantra yoga, the yoga of living, was created to give access for enlightenment to everybody else. Those of us that wanted it, but were in the lower castes. And I hate to talk about the caste system, but that's kind of how it all started, right? So when we talk about the yoga of living, what that means is utilizing every daily thing that we do as an opportunity for spiritual growth. So in those days, it might be we were working in the field, we were milking a cow, we were taking care of our children, we were cooking, we were praying, we were having sex, right? All of those things. And every single one of those was an opportunity to slow down and to be mindful and to get access to that spiritual enlightenment inside of us, access to the unknown knowledge of what it's like to be connected and live joyfully. So, I will often say, people laugh at me all the time, everything that I do is a spiritual experience. And they're like, but like literally, doing the dishes, right? If you slow down and feel the warm water and feel the bubbles and feel things moving over the plate and the metal, and you feel all, and then you dry it and you feel the softness of the towel. Suddenly, this is a mindful experience. Suddenly, it's so sensual. It's so live. It makes you feel good, right? Well, that's what life is as a Tantra yoga practitioner. Now, I will say this, the reason that it's become so sexy in the Western world is because sex is a piece of that. And of course, that's exciting to talk about, right? And I will say that our sexual energy is the most powerful energy of the human being. And so redirecting that, transmuting that helps you to achieve a lot of this like Tantra fully coming alive thing, but it's not the only practice. It's just one of many.
Yes, I agree with that. I love what you're saying. I think one of the hallmarks of Tantra for me has been, that it is a practice for householders and also great for women as well, because there have been so many spiritual traditions in the past which have sort of elevated men above women, and Tantra doesn't do that.
As a matter of fact, with Tantra, we worship the goddess. If we actually go historically, and when the Western world came to India and started to notice this, they would say that they had these sex temples, right? And it was horrifying, and they stopped them and they shut them down. But the sex temple was about the male serving the goddess. It was really about, because the woman creates, the woman has the children, the woman has the creativity, the woman is the pillar of the household and society. And so these temples were about worshiping the goddess and men learning how to do that. So when they came home, they treated her with love and respect. They cherished her, built her up so that she could be the pillar she was meant to be.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lovely whole conversation in that for both women and men with regard to the place of the role of women and also the place of the feminine in our society, because we live in a society, well, more or less worldwide, where the feminine has been suppressed, demoted, we might even say, if we look at it from the context of how these was looked at in these ancient traditions. And it's also true in India as well, that even though people might do religious practices and honor the goddess in that sense, it doesn't always translate into into human society in terms of how human women are treated. But I think there is a lot for us to learn from that with regard to the role of the masculine and the feminine, and for the inner feminine to be honored in both men and women, which is something that the world, to me, it seems to so sorely need. Tell me more about how you see Tantra associated with leadership.
So I'd like to start with just asking anybody who's listening right now, When you think of a leader, what is it that you think about? Who is it that you think about? And in the Western world, we usually think about the President of the United States, the Prime Minister in England. We'll think about these sorts of people, right? Mm-hmm. Even the President of India, right? You think about that kind of person that they're bold and big and they love talking and they have opinions and everybody gets to hear their opinion. And they do definitely have the love of their country in mind, but the way that they present is this powerful, confident, I have an opinion, you get to hear it type of person, right? And the reality is that is not the only kind of leadership. There is a whole range of leadership. And so when I talk about Tantra, my big thing is really clearing the chakras. That's the base of my Tantra practice. And so if you don't know what the chakras are, that's just, we have energy centers in the body that move and create energy to support us in different areas of our life. We actually have about 200 or over 200 of them, but for the most part, we focus on the 7, which I call the pillar of perfection. And in That's the pillar nice. Of perfection, we have our 7 chakras and they represent different parts of us. So for instance, the root chakra is all about safety. It's about being rooted. It's about trust. And so many people don't have that handled. And so they're not able to take care of the rest of them because it all builds on top of each other. But when you talk about leadership, once you start to clear those chakras, you start to become in tune with where is your leadership really coming from? So most of the leaders that we see in the world that we think of as leaders are coming from the first chakra, the root, or from the power chakra, which is the third one. It's all about power. It's all about presenting. It's all about how they stand and how they, but there's so many other different kinds of leadership. I've got actually a chapter that I wrote on this. Can I share with you like some of the different leadership styles just to kind of make this real? Would that be okay? That
would be wonderful. Yes, please.
Okay, great. So red, the root chakra, those are the pillars of society. They are solid, reliable, and stable. So those sorts of leaders were George Washington, Bill Gates, Eleanor Roosevelt. Orange, which is the sacral chakra, those who lead with creativity, playfulness, and joy. Those are people like Princess Diana or Ellen DeGeneres. Yellow is the power chakra, and that's the third one. And these are powerful, confident, and they inspire awe. I love that. These are people like Oprah Winfrey. I like to say Jean-Luc Picard if you like Star Trek, but he was the epitome of this person in a beautiful, beautiful way. And then Margaret Thatcher. Green is the heart chakra. And these are people who lead with connection, collaboration, and compassion. This would be Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa. Blue, these are people that lead with their words. So like JFK, Martin Luther King, right? Those types of people. Indigo is for the third eye. And those are people who lead with knowledge. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Thomas Edison. And then white is those who lead through elevating the spirit. These are people like Mahatma Gandhi or Maya Angelou. So you see, leadership shows up in so many different ways, and yet we think it only shows up in one way. And because of that, we don't see ourselves as leaders and we can't step into our personal leadership. So that's why when I talk about Tantra, I talk about who are you? Fill yourself up, clear all your chakras, and discover where your leadership lies. Then you can fully step into your power. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. I think that's such a nice way of looking at leadership, to point out, the different, a way to point out the different styles as like the different chakras. But let's talk about, you mentioned clearing the chakras, because I'm sure there might be people listening who are saying, well, how do we do that?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's its own whole class. But
or more.
Or course, exactly. It's been a lifelong practice for me.
Exactly.
And I do want to say, actually preface this with, they'll never be fully clear. And it's kind of like brushing your teeth. they get mucky. You have to continue to clear them every single day, just like you brush your teeth.
A teacher of mine once said, have you ever heard of a house that only needs cleaning once?
That's yes, exactly. It gets dusty. That's so true. I love that. To clear the chakras in Tantra, we talk about breath, movement, and sound. And then I add visualization. So you utilize those 3 or those 4 elements to open the chakras. And I actually have some meditations that you can do. You can find them online. The chakras work from the bottom up. As you go through life, if you are living a spiritual life, you will clear each chakra. And then each chakra opens you to clearing the next chakra, to clearing the next chakra. So you go from the bottom up. People often think in spirituality, you want to start from the top down. But the problem is that even if you're fully open in the top, you can't ground it and bring it into your life and be fully activated unless everything below it is clear and available to receive. Right? So you want to start from the bottom up. There are practices where you start by just focusing on the chakra that you want to focus on. I always start at the root. You take a few deep breaths. You focus on the color and chant a sound for that particular chakra. And you see it as a rosebud. So that one's red. You see it as a red rosebud. And then as you do the sound and the breath, you watch the rosebud open. Just that visualization allows a clearing of that chakra. And if you do it enough, it stays open. It gets wider and wider and wider and more available and more receiving and more stable, right? And it becomes now the foundation for the rest. And then you do that for each of them. So in a practice, I will do all of them. I start at the bottom, work all the way up, and you'll notice in your life, things start to shift. So for instance, when your red chakra, your root chakra is feeling really solid and open and clean, you feel stable and confident, and you trust yourself and you trust the world more, even if you have reasons to not, but you open so that now you can see those things. If the second chakra is open, the sacral one, you start to be more creative. I remember when I went through one of these Tantra classes, suddenly I came home and I was starting to do beadwork and painting. I didn't even relate it to the sacral chakra, but there it was. Creativity had suddenly entered my life in a new way. So like that, you breathe into them, you open them, you visualize that rose opening, and then you get to experience in the world what starts to happen. Was that helpful?
No, that's very helpful. And I wonder if I could just add something in there, because to me, when we talk about, the clearing process, we're talking also about, clearing out, emotional patterns, wounding patterns that no longer serve, defensive patterns, reactive patterns. And that's, I guess, really what we, as leaders, we're at our strongest if we haven't got all our own stuff in the way.
It's true. It's true. And I think, so there are many different ways to clear a lot of this, the ugliness that's happened to us in life that sticks to our insides, right? And so many practitioners will focus on the blocks, right? I come up from a place of wanting to focus on bliss. So for me, I want to focus on all that's good and all our potential so that eventually it pushes out all that other stuff because it can't exist in the same space.
Yeah.
So where some practitioners will help us to really clear those blocks by approaching what are the wounds, I approach what are the affirmations? What is the beauty inside of you that you can now focus on and make it so big that there's no room for anything else? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think there's the other side of, some spiritual practices, which are very sort of wound clearing focused, is that we can sort of get addicted to what, Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body. And
it's true.
and it's never going to be completely cleared. You're always going to, if you're that way focused, you're going to find some new stuff to clear.
To affirm it.
Yeah.
And I think that what's really, really important for people to understand is that we came to this planet to have a series of experiences to create evolution for ourselves. Those experiences are often not awesome, sometimes horrifying, and they rest in our bodies. And then our mission is to find ways to clear that and stand in our power in spite or even because of those things. So understand that this is a lifelong process. We were built to evolve through the chakras and that clearing and our capacity to be fully human our entire lives. So you will never be fully clear, but you can be really, really clear for you. And then you keep working. That's why it's a lifelong practice. That's why you don't, like you say, you have to keep dust in your house. It doesn't stop, right? And as you work on that, you evolve higher and higher and higher.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking, well, it has to be a lifelong practice too, because we live in an evolving universe. We don't live, what's outside of us isn't any more static than we are. So
it's true.
How can there be a place where we don't still have the potential to evolve if the universe is evolving?
Exactly.
So I'd love to say, we talked at the beginning about, Tantra and its associations with sexuality and sexual energy. So I think we need to talk about sexual energy because there'll be people who are listening who are very disappointed if we don't.
Yes, it's the most exciting part.
Because they clicked on the Tantra one.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Okay.
Let's go for it.
You got it. I love that. So let me just start by, and I mentioned this earlier, if you read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, you will notice, I think it was chapter 11, where he talks about sexual transmutation. So when we talk about sex, especially in many of the Western cultures, and actually it's true even in the Eastern cultures now, but it wasn't always. But we don't talk about sex as a good energy, sexual energy as a good energy that we can utilize. Catherine, you had said before we turned on record that in India, that's what all the leaders do. But it's not just India, it's everywhere. I mean, think about who was interviewed by Napoleon Hill. It was Henry Ford. It was all of these big moguls, right? They talked about sexual transmutation because sex is the significantly biggest, strongest human force that we have access to. Why not utilize that to improve our lives and our powerfulness and our leadership? And so true leaders understand this. So this is a little bit, I probably shouldn't say this, but we get irritated that they're out there having so much sex, right? Because so many of them haven't mastered this skill of how to transmute it, to use it for the betterment of our life and the betterment of others. So it's been studied forever, but we just don't use it. So let's talk a little bit about how to use it and why that's good.
Yeah.
Sexual energy lights us up. Like if you think about when you're first in love, right? What is that? Some of it is compassion, love, connection. Some of it is just lust. It's our sexual juices are now flowing. And have you ever noticed when you're in that place, how much more creative you are? How much more kind you are? Have you noticed this? You're like nice to everybody. The world is like beautiful. All you see is beauty. And now you're creating and you're doing more at work and there's, and your relationships are better. That's what it does for us. And that is sexual energy. Now, what if we could live like that? And if we get access to that sexual energy, we can. Now, certainly things are going to evolve, right? You don't want to be in that like spastic and love energy all your life. It can be exhausting and disruptive, but you want access to what that brings you.
Yes.
Right? Confidence, passion, compassion, love for life, all of those things, right? Feeling fully alive. So when I tell people about this, there's another thing that's really, really important. People think that sexual energy is only created through sex. That's not true. Your Tantra practice, mine started when I was 16. I didn't have sex till many, many years after that. Right? So the practice can be a solo practice. And it's very, very important to understand that if you are tuning in to your sexual energy in that way and utilizing it, you don't want to muddle it by having sex with the wrong people because bad energy, while you're having sex will muddle your own energy. It's so much more work then to clean up after that. So for me, it's always been an imperative. Anybody that I am intimate with, they are tantrically trained or have an interest in it, right? So that energy has to be a match for me because it's that important. You may not have that, but just understand you have to take the responsibility for anybody that you have an intimate relationship with. You need to be responsible for the energy that is coming to you and for clearing that. So that's my Tantra sex talk, but let's talk about how we could actually use it. Would that be fun?
Yes.
Okay, good. The sexual energy actually comes from your sacral chakra. So it's the second chakra. And I actually have a gift for your people that talk about how to clear the sacral chakra.
Oh, wonderful.
Energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be what I'll be giving everybody. But let me just give you a little bit of a highlight. You're going to want to breathe into the sacral chakra. So I say take a deep breath and have it go down to where you feel like it's tickling the back of your belly button. So you want it to go all the way down, right? And then you're going to let it out. And then do it again. Take white light and breathe that down into your nose, to the back of your belly button. And then release it through your mouth. You may notice that white goes in and gray comes out. If you can visualize that, you're already starting to do clearing with the breath. On your third breath, you're going to take that in and you hold it. And you're going to say, Vam. As you visualize a yellow rose opening. And now while you pull that out, now when you're breathing out, I want you to visualize the energy that just opened, flushing through your entire body, all of your chakras, as you're breathing it out. Because now you've got clean energy and you want to wash your whole body with that yummy, clean energy. So that's a super simple practice you could do what did that take us? 15 seconds, 30 seconds that will clear that energy, invigorate you, and put you awash with the beauty and excitement of that sort of joyful sexual energy that we can utilize. I'll do that when I'm losing focus, I'm losing creativity. I'm a dancer, so if my dance isn't working quite right. So there's a lot of times that I utilize that. And the chant that I used was Vam. It started with a V. And that'll just open up that chakra. You're going to do better if the first one is open first, right? I already mentioned that, but that's how you get direct access to our sexual energy.
And all the creative possibilities that come with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's just talk a little bit more then about, the other side you mentioned before about, how often there are various stories associated with leaders of sexual misdemeanors and things like that. And whether we're questioning whether, if they were practitioners of Tantra, they were followers who had some training, whether that would actually happen because they would have other places to use it. So it sort of all comes into the whole conversation about, integrity and leadership too.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought that up, Catherine, because I think it's important for all of us to understand that we take responsibility for our own leadership. And you show up as a leader that you are and want to be. In other words, so many people think about leaders and think, I don't want to be that person. I'm not that person. I don't want to be that person. I don't aspire to that. You don't have to. Your leadership style is individual to you. And as you step into your power and your leadership, you get to decide what that looks like, how much integrity you have, what you're bringing to your power, what you speak. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Does it improve the world? Right? All of those things that you do as a leader are your responsibility. You don't have to be like any of those people, any of those impressions that you might have, right? If you see all leaders as sexually promiscuous, it doesn't mean that you need to be sexually promiscuous, right? You could utilize that energy in ways that I've mentioned and through other study, right? Don't be so quick to judge what's possible as a leader based on what we see out there in the world. Just take responsibility for who you are going to be when you step into your power.
I'd love to talk more about power from this point of view. The tantric view of power. It's like it's actually a talk that I've given at some events which I title it The Feminine as Power, because in Tantra, all energy, all power is Shakti, which is the feminine, which is a very, very different view of power than we have in the West, where power generally has, I guess you would
masculine,
say, more masculine connotations. There are more men in power. And then we have these many situations where, as you say, people are put off perhaps at times from seeking positions of power because of the abuses of power that they see. And it's either because they think I'm not like that, or perhaps that they fear that they are like that if they're in that position. So I wonder if you had any more comments on the subject of power with regard to Tantra.
I love that question. And thank you for bringing it up, because I had forgotten to mention some of this stuff. We do think of leadership as very masculine, and understand that it does not have to be. It's only what's being modeled right now. Even female leaders often tend to focus on their masculine traits so that they can step into leadership in a world that's of male-dominated leadership. It's what people understand. It's what people trust. It's what people believe we need to be. And I have paid a huge price in my own leadership role because I have refused to step into that. Because for me, I understand that I will never be as good at being a man as a man is. Right? And no man is ever going to be as good at being a woman as I am. So I have innate abilities that make me really powerful that no man really has access to. Why would I try to step into something where I can only be second best instead of utilizing what I can naturally be the very best at? So men as leaders are powerful. They're hunters, they're decision makers, there's all these things we associate with masculine power, right? What about the feminine? We're collaborators. We're powerful in our ability to lead and change through love, right? We collaborate. We love. We stand in the feminine power of holding space for change and evolution in ourselves and others in the world. Our power is in creation. We're visionary. We're visionary and we're also implementers. It's like magic. Who gets that? But as women get that, right? Men don't have access to that. They have one or the other, right? But we can do it all. We're better at some, right? And you certainly want to focus on what you're best at. But what I'm trying to say is we have access to a whole other set of skills and superpowers that we can bring forth powerfully without having to be a man or act like a man. It's so much more powerful because you're at your best. You're not doing an imitation of you. Now, all of us need a balance of masculine and feminine, right? I have to say that even as a leader, even though I focus so much on my feminine, the masculine really is there, right? It has to be.
Yes.
And for men, there has to be a level of feminine, right?
Yes. Yes.
But our superpowers are sort of God-given gifts as women.
That's so important, the whole point about the superpowers, and that each person has them. And I think often when we're talking about power, the real thing is to discover where your own innate power lies. And so often that is to do with, connecting to energy, to doing the clearing work you've spoken about, which brings a person into connection with their creativity and their unique gifts. And then maybe the leadership comes from there.
Yes, absolutely. I do want to say one more thing about the feminine and our feminine power. I feel like us women in this society, in today's world, are very gifted because we have been brought up to believe we have to act like men. And because of that, we have learned so much about the masculine power. We've had to live in that. So we have had our whole lives access to all of those masculine superpowers. And then we have our innate feminine superpowers. We can marry them and be very, very powerful in both of those areas. Men do not have that gift. They haven't been taught how to have the feminine superpowers. because they've been favored. They've been favored, but they haven't gotten the gift. We got the gift of having access to both.
Yeah. I once heard somebody say that, living in a patriarchal society for men was like being fish in water, but for women was like being birds trying to swim in water.
Yeah. But we're birds that can swim too.
Yeah.
We get both, right? Because we have to survive in this society.
That's so true. And for me, certainly, having sort of followed some, traditional tantric pathways, it's been so helpful to have that model of equal honoring of masculine and feminine as just like a guiding framework for life. And, so I love what you're offering to people, Moneeka, and that you have, developed a whole, suite of practices and writings where you've boiled it down to some really essential points, and you've focused on the joy and the bliss, which is something else that's missing largely in our society at the current time. People want it, but they don't know how to get it. And I think you're one person they can go to learn from for that. How can they contact you?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things I want to tell your people about. So first of all, I wrote, my flagship book was actually called Choose Bliss. So you can find that book, Choose Bliss, on Amazon. So that would be one place to start. The other thing is I created what I call the missing chapter. And this is the chapter that I didn't want for the mainstream because people do think it's a little bit weird and they hadn't met me. So I called it the missing chapter, and it's all about how to utilize your sexual energy to live your most blissful life. So I call it the missing chapter, and that I would like to offer to your audience so that they can get that now that they've met me. You can certainly read the book, but if you just want to start with the missing chapter, go to tantraforleadership.com. So that's tantraforleadership.com. You just put in your email address and the missing chapter will be delivered directly to your inbox.
Fabulous. That's, I'm sure you'll get lots of people wanting that. I certainly want to read it.
Yeah, it's fun. I was actually rereading. I was like, ooh, I wrote it a long time ago. I'm like, oh, there's such good information. Like, it reminds me. And I think this is the thing, right? Is like, when you've been practicing, I've been practicing since I was 16. I'm not going to tell you how long that is, but it is many decades. And you forget some of those basics that they're the simple things that make such a big difference in our practice. So it was fun to read it again.
Now, I'm curious to ask you about what led you to practicing when you were 16, but I don't know, I'm not sure if we've got time. Have you got, can it boil down to a couple of minutes?
Yes. I was living in India. I was walking down the street and there was a book fair, and there was one vendor who had an English bookstore. And I went one day and I bought Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and I bought Vincent Norman Peale's Positive Thinking and Dale Carnegie's Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah. And I started to read those books. And then I hit chapter 11 in Think and Grow Rich. And I was like, ooh, what is this? I'm a 16-year-old girl, right? Like, how can a 16-year-old girl resist, right? I'm like, ooh, this sounds sexy. And so I went back to that store and I found a book about Tantra and using your sexual energy. And I was in India and with my uncle. And so I couldn't buy this book. So what I did is I took it, I threw money at the guy, stuck it under my coat so that nobody would see it. And then I would read this under my blanket at night after everybody had gone to bed. So that's how it started. Napoleon Hill told me to go buy a book about Tantra. That's how the whole thing happened.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Thank you so much. That's a lovely ending for our talk. Thank you so much, Moneeka. It's been a delight.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.